to Jesus Christ, and welcome to this week's episode of God With Us Live. Every week, we're joined by men and women, monastics, clergy, and laity, exploring exciting and inspiring ways to live our Eastern Catholic faith today. Your host is Father Deacon Nick Medelsky, a husband, father, and deacon of the Ukrainian Catholic Eparchy of St. Nicholas. And now, here's Father Deacon Nick.
Hello, and welcome once again. God With Us Live listeners, Father Deacon Nick Medelsky, excited as always to be here with you to find out more beautiful things going on in our Eastern Catholic churches on this wonderful podcast. It's a great chance to have some important conversations, find out about some wonderful ministries, and again, some great things going on in our Eastern Catholic churches. Our guest today is actually one of our few repeat guests so far on the podcasts. Hopefully one of the first of many. And our guest today is Jocelyn Abyad. She was in one of our first few episodes talking about Melkite Mama and busy kids and all those sorts of things. And she is a busy mom in both senses of the word. And she is now involved in a new ministry that I'm excited to hear about. It's a very important ministry that will touch a lot of people and do a lot of good. And rather than me talk all about it, we'll have Huria tell us all about it. But even though you've been on the show before, would you mind introducing yourself just briefly for our listeners who might have, like me, have short-term memory loss and might not remember?
Don't we all? So yes, thank you so much. It's truly a joy to be speaking with you again. I'm a big fan of the podcast in general. So my name for your listeners is Jocelyn Abyad, and I am the wife of Father Ziad Abyad. I'm the mother to 7 girls on earth and 3 babies in heaven. And I'm an Arizona native, so I feel very fortunate to serve at St. John of the Desert Melkite Catholic Parish in Phoenix, Arizona, which is near a lot of extended family and my longtime friends. In addition to volunteering at the parish, I maintain an online presence as Melkite Mama, as you mentioned, and I share homeschool and liturgical living tips online. I write for Busy Kids magazine, which is a children's magazine geared specifically to those who are of the Byzantine tradition. And extending from that work, I direct the National Busy Classroom program, where I write and develop a monthly curriculum for groups that want to participate together in the Busy Kids curriculum. And I host the Phoenix chapter of that organization.
Very cool. Very cool. And as I mentioned in the intro, though, you are a busy mom, and as if all of that wasn't enough to keep you busy, you've also been involved in starting a new ministry, a new outreach. Could you tell us just a little bit about that, and we'll kind of dive into it as we go through the episode?
Yeah. So my newest endeavor is a ministry called We Carry You Still, and it seeks to serve those who have experienced miscarriage or infant loss. And we do that by providing practical resources for their immediate needs and then supporting their long-term journey towards healing. And we have 3 primary missions or aspects of our mission. The first one is to provide memory boxes to women who have recently experienced a loss. We offer local retreats to provide healing, particularly through the sacraments at those retreats. And we refer to medical, social, and product providers whose resources are faithful to church teaching through our website.
Very good, very good. And I know this is a sort of ministry that's sorely needed. We haven't been touched by miscarriage, but I know a lot of our friends and family have as well. And this is an important ministry to be able to offer. For you personally, and kind of also looking around at those around you, what kind of inspired you to start a ministry like this?
Yeah, it's a super personal topic to me. So miscarriage definitely has touched my family. A little over 3 years ago, my husband and I lost 3 babies in a row to miscarriage. We lost Eden at 10 weeks and Thomas at 6 weeks, and James we lost at 15 weeks. So as you can imagine, the world really changed for me when I had to bury my babies. And we had 6 living children at the time, and it was just not something that I expected to happen to us. We can all fall into that mentality of like, that's something for other people. It's this other mentality. But my whole worldview of birth and babies was challenged through this. And so in particular, these losses brought to light the remarkable lack of resources, particularly ones faithful to church teaching for those who were in my shoes. And this isn't just emotional resources, but practical ones as well. I found myself in the position with some really basic questions that I didn't know, like, how do you bury a baby that you miscarried at home? Or how do you purchase a casket for an infant? Nobody talks about these things, and they are decisions that you have to typically make in a quick time frame. So this was a really dark night of my soul time, and the grief was so deep. I talk to people now, I can honestly still feel the scream inside my heart and my stomach. And I needed time and I needed help to heal. And I really thank God for the family members and friends and professionals who came alongside me on my journey towards healing. And they really inspired me. So after I had received all that help, I wanted to give back. And so I started volunteering with a miscarriage ministry here in Phoenix that was operating out of a Protestant church. And the women who run that group were integral in my own healing process. They're dear friends. They have an incredible ministry. And I was inspired by the work they were doing to make similar resources available to Catholic women and families on a larger scale. So I brought up the idea to my mom, who had recently retired, and she said, let's do it. So she's an incredible, intelligent, hardworking, faithful woman, and gave me that little spark of encouragement and a ton of support. And so we joined forces and we started working on it. We asked a couple of friends of mine, Lindsay and Tanya, to join our board as well. And We Carry You Still is the end result of that collaboration.
And I know we've been talking about, you've mentioned it was difficult to find resources that were kind of faithful to church teaching and things like that. Why do you think that was kind of difficult, I guess, and why is it important, I suppose, is probably the better question. Why is it important to have resources that are, grounded in the faith?
I think there's actually 2 answers to this, really, because I think the obvious answer is that our theology speaks in a particular way about our lives and the lives of our children who have died. So when you are in grief, you want people who speak your language, so to say. For example, it really bothered me when people would say, you have an angel baby now. My babies are not angels. They're saints. They're innocent souls in heaven. And something that's important to me is that, God willing, I'll meet them someday in their resurrected bodies. So that embodiment of our children, but also our grieving is really shaped by our faith. So in my darkest days, I really look to the saints, in particular, the Mother of God, as a consoler, because she knows what it is like to bury her child. And I wanted comfort and healing through the lens of Catholic theology, and secular or Protestant groups couldn't provide me with that, no matter how wonderful they were. But I think a second layer and something that as a universal church we need to ponder and think about a lot more is the church's commitment to being pro-life. I think this concept of pro-life often gets relegated to only the topics of abortion, maybe euthanasia, but it is really so much more than that. We ask all married couples to be open to life, and that inherently means they are open to this possibility of death. Nearly 50% of all women will experience miscarriage or infant loss in their lifetime. These are women, these are faithful couples, no matter, they're sitting in our pews and we're failing them. We're leaving them without the resources they need. We talk about how important burying the dead is. That corporal work of mercy is a priority to us as Catholics. And as a church, it's time for us to do better by supporting these faithful families who are open to life and as part of that journey experience the loss of a child.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's an important resource to offer, and something that should naturally flow from our theology, from our respect for life, as you mentioned, right? Our openness to life is also, in a certain sense, right, an understanding that we are at the same time open to the risk, I guess you might say, of death, in a way. So that is an interesting perspective to offer on that, and like you said, very important, and definitely something that the church should be able to offer. I know, looking through the women involved, the Meet Our Team section on the website of We Carry You Still, that this isn't simply an Eastern Catholic ministry, right? There's Roman Catholics involved, as well as Orthodox Christians involved too. Could you talk about, was that kind of a conscious decision on your part? Did that just kind of organically happen, or how did that happen?
Maybe a little bit of both. I grew up Roman Catholic, so my mom is still Roman Catholic. My dad is a deacon in the Roman Catholic Church. And so with her as my partner, we were inherently this East and West vision. And I always say I like to breathe with both lungs. It was something that was really important to me. But interestingly enough, the next person that we invited to the board was Lindsay, and she's one of my dearest friends, and she's Greek Orthodox. But she really taught me how to do death, how to grieve, how to visit the cemetery. That wasn't something that I grew up with. And so she has this beautiful and rich experience and traditions around honoring those who have died. And I just could not do this ministry without her. And so as we were forming our mission statement and working on this, she says, well, you're talking a lot about Catholics, and here I am Orthodox. What about my church and the rest of my parish? And I said, you know what, you're right. And she and I have for a long time felt that, bringing the church back together, we're going to go from bottom up. We're going to make the lay people come together. Not make them, but, we're inspired to come together, and we pray that will inspire the churches as a whole, right, to come together officially. And so I think inherently, I love the East and the West. And so just as a natural extension of that, it became that we could speak in both the Catholic and Orthodox sphere, because when it comes to this, we do share the common theology and the common language around it. And so I think that this is something that can benefit both churches.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, reunion, communion between our churches will kind of happen from the ground up. So it's wonderful that this is, I guess, ecumenical effort, right? Involving both the Eastern and Western churches, both within the Catholic churches as well as the Orthodox churches. It's beautiful to see that cooperation together on something like this. And like you said, again, going back to that common theology we share around life and death as well, it's beautiful that we're able to kind of collaborate on something like this.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that aspect of the ministry.
Well, if you're just joining us here on God With Us Live, I suppose you're not flipping through channels and tuning in. Sometimes I forget that from being on radio. I'm used to that kind of send-off. But we're speaking with Jocelyn Abyad about her ministry, We Carry You Still. And we'll be talking more about kind of the different aspects of that ministry when we come back from a short break here on God With Us Live. So stay tuned.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Scenes with the Saints. Do you know which saint was banished from her homeland, yet miraculously returned to work miracles? Saint Olympia was born to noble parents in Constantinople in the 4th century, and as was the custom at the time, was betrothed at a young age to a nobleman. Although the marriage was supposed to take place when Olympia grew up, the young man died, and Saint Olympia resolved to remain unmarried for the rest of her life. When her parents passed away, Saint Olympia started distributing their vast wealth to those in need in Constantinople, as well as using those funds to support churches, monasteries, hospitals, and orphanages. Due to her generous care for the needs of others, the Patriarch of Constantinople, Saint Nectarius, appointed Saint Olympia a deaconess responsible for caring for those in need on behalf of the church. After Saint Nectarius passed away, he was succeeded by the great Saint John Chrysostom, who was later banished from Constantinople. Saint Olympia and the other deaconesses strongly protested to the emperor, but to no avail. Before leaving, Saint John encouraged the deaconesses to faithfully serve whomever his successor might be. Saint Olympia soon became a target herself. Not long after Saint John was exiled, a church was burned down, taking a large part of Constantinople along with it. Unjustly, the authorities decided to blame the supporters of Saint John Chrysostom. Saint Olympia was questioned repeatedly, and despite her innocence and a total lack of evidence, was fined a large sum of money for the crime of arson, money that could have been used to feed the hungry, comfort the sick, or to shelter those left homeless by the fires. Saint Olympia attempted to leave Constantinople to escape further persecution, but was instead sent to the prison in Nicomedia, where she passed away. After her death, Saint Olympia appeared to the bishop of Nicomedia in a dream, and she made a strange request. She asked the bishop to place her remains in a wooden casket and to throw it into the Sea of Marmara. Wherever her casket would wash ashore, the people were to bury her. The bishop did as instructed, and her body washed ashore at a town quite near to Constantinople. The people there venerated her holy relics, and many miracles were reported at her tomb. Unfortunately, her relics were desecrated by the invading Persians a few hundred years later. The townspeople were able to recover them, but the Patriarch of Constantinople decided it would be much safer to relocate the relics to Constantinople. There, in the city that had already benefited so greatly from her generosity while she was alive, Saint Olympia was laid to rest in a woman's monastery founded through her generosity, which fittingly bore her name. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scenes with the Saints. Join us again next time when we learn more about the lives of these holy men and women.
Hello and welcome back to God With Us Live. Father Deacon Nick Medelsky again here with Jocelyn Abyad, talking about the ministry We Carry You Still, the miscarriage ministry that she's been a part of getting started out there in Arizona. One of the things you mentioned, and I know this from talking to friends and family who've gone through this as well, is that it's difficult to find resources after a miscarriage. I know I've talked to some people who said, it's very difficult to even talk about, obviously. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit more, though. Why it's difficult for moms and families to find kind of resources after a miscarriage.
I think first and foremost is really just the sheer gravity of the loss. It's not just the person or the child that you've lost, but there's a lot of questions about your fertility, your future, your relationship with your spouse. It's just an incredible emotional and difficult time. And you're very vulnerable. It's hard to think clearly in the midst of all of that. And on top of that, you're basically having to learn a new skill set. You're having to think about things you never realized you needed to know. Things I mentioned before, like finding a casket for a first trimester loss, or medical options if you need assistance that are ethical and honor your dignity and that of your child. We live in a culture that doesn't value life in the womb. And so it can be really difficult to find doctors or even friends sometimes who are willing to acknowledge the sanctity of the child's life, irregardless of their age. And on top of this, there just aren't that many resources out there. And so it can be challenging to find them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And now we move from kind of the problem to the solution, I suppose. Would you tell us about what kind of resources you're able to offer at We Care You Still, and maybe what resources you'd hope to be able to offer?
So the main resource that we have right now that is up and running is our website. And our hope for that is that it will be a central triage station of sorts for Catholic and Orthodox people who are touched by this type of loss, no matter where you live. So our website is wecarryoustill.org, and you can find links to sites that give medical expectations, practical products that you need, like miscarriage kits for home delivery, as well as counselors and emotional support if you need a little help. A little extra help in your healing process. We also share testimonials from other women who have experienced this loss, and we even have book recommendations and gift ideas for family members and friends who want to show their support to a family that's grieving. Locally, we have a couple other layers. Beginning in October, we're going to offer memory boxes to anyone who has experienced a loss. So we have designed these gorgeous boxes with a book, a journal, holy water, a custom memorial ornament, and a print that can be framed. Just a gift to someone in this moment of loss. And we left room in the box for that family to add in their own personal mementos from their baby, like hospital bracelets or cards that they receive. And then finally, also locally, we have plans to host day-long retreats. These will be twice a year, offered to women and couples, a place to process their loss alongside others who know what it is like to lose a child. So this is a unique aspect of our ministry in that we want to serve the dads too. I think they're often forgotten and underserved in this space. And again, when we talk about those primary values within our faith, hopefully, I mean, we never hope for loss, but hopefully these losses are occurring within a marriage. And so we want to minister to that couple and not separate that union.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's something that, is very important to not just, obviously, a mother's grief is a special kind of grief and particularly intense, but it also affects fathers, right, and families. So I love to hear that you're serving everyone there, right, who might have been touched by this.
Yeah.
So moving, not all of our listeners obviously live in Arizona, but I'm sure a lot of us, as you mentioned, 50% of women will experience this kind of loss in their lifetimes. And obviously a lot of us listening have either family members or friends who've been touched by miscarriage. And just kind of curious if maybe you could offer us, our listeners, a little bit of insight into, outside of referring them to the website, of course, what kind of support we can provide, either as individuals or even as a parish family, to women who are, and families who are experiencing this kind of loss.
I think, listening to this podcast and pondering these things and pondering how this is an issue for all of us as a church, how we need to do better is an important first step. But I think more specifically, the number one thing you can do for someone who is walking through this type of loss is offer your presence. So it can be incredibly isolating to lose a child. So if you're able to attend the prayer service or funeral, or bring a meal to the family, babysitting their living children for an afternoon so they can go to follow-up medical appointments, dropping off a thoughtful card or a gift. Another really big one is acknowledging their baby who has died as their child and using their baby's name if possible. I think sometimes people feel afraid to bring up the loss as if you're going to upset the person. But I assure you they haven't forgotten what happened or forgotten their child. So you acknowledging the child actually lightens the weight of carrying grief alone. It doesn't make it heavier. So on our website education page, we also offer free printable guides that list even more tips and practical suggestions. These are customized to all the people touched by miscarriage. So we have one for mothers, fathers, grandparents, friends, and even one for parents with living children that discusses how to help your children grieve their sibling. So those are free to print, and any parish or ministry could go onto our website and use those, or even individuals, and that gives you some really practical and specific tips to help.
So you mentioned something important that's available on the website, these guides, right, that are kind of tailored to different situations, for mothers, for families, for parishes. Could you talk just a little bit about what went into kind of, I guess, putting together the resources? I think a lot of people, they go on a website and they're like, oh, okay, cool, a free downloadable document with this and that in it. But I don't know that everyone appreciates maybe the amount of work that goes into preparing resources like this. Could you talk just a little bit about what's involved with putting together resources like that?
Yeah. This is kind of a little lighter answer to our heavy topic today, but I will say, I think homeschooling prepared me so much for this ministry, because I really had to adopt a mindset of you can do hard things with my kids. We would come to a math lesson or a topic, and that's my line to them is, yes, this is tricky, but we can do hard things. And, I thought the ministry was a beautiful idea, but as it came to a practical reality, it was pretty overwhelming. And just, I had never designed a website before, I had never filed to be a nonprofit before, these really practical pieces. So the beautiful thing is that that God has just opened every door when it comes to this ministry. My mom was in charge of grants, writing grants for a school district here before she retired. So she was more familiar with the nonprofit process. So really all of her expertise poured into that. And then a lot of just personal time and research on my part. These are basically all the resources that I have found. And then I reached out to each of those vendors to get their permission to list them on the website and, personally vet all of them, read every book that we listed on there. And of course, this is over the last 3.5 years that I've accumulated all these different pieces. And then what's really exciting is a local Catholic counseling group has come alongside me. They're wanting to actually springboard off of this and start a support group. And so they provided some insight and help with that. And then another organization is actually helping me to write the retreat curriculum and coming out with a miscarriage book specifically for our boxes, custom made for us.
Wow.
With more of an Eastern perspective, which I'm really excited about. I think it'll speak to everyone that we're serving. But for example, just instead of Western artwork, we're going to use iconography. And so really so many people have come along behind the scenes to put all these pieces together. It's a lot of people, a lot of time that are all working together to bring those forward.
It's fantastic to hear just so many different groups, and like you said, God opening doors along the way, right? That maybe you didn't even know you needed open at first. Just beautiful to hear that it's all kind of come together like that, and everyone's really showing how important a ministry like this is to all kind of get behind it, right?
Yeah. And that has been it, is just people are coming to us wanting to be involved and wanting to be part of this. And I just think that speaks to the great need that is there, that this population really, it needs support, and people recognize that it isn't there yet now.
Absolutely. For our listeners who want to get involved, who want to support the great work you're doing at We Carry You Still. How can they get involved? How can they help support this fantastic ministry?
Yeah. I think the first thing is just to spread the word. We, print some of our guides from our education page, share our website with others, and follow us on Facebook or Instagram. If you haven't experienced a miscarriage yourself, it's likely that a friend or a relative has, even if they haven't shared that information out loud. And so I think the more people that know about us, or even just have a note in their mind that we exist, when they need us, we will be there, right? We'll be able to come to their mind, and they'll be the resources that they need, rather than having to go and research them all over the World Wide Web. If you live in the Phoenix area, you can also volunteer with us and sign up on our events page. And we would love to have help packing those memory boxes, supporting our retreats or other events. And of course, last but definitely not least, We Carry You Still is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're still in the midst of our initial fundraising campaign. So we need to raise about $10,000 to fully fund our work. And so far, we've raised a little over 60% of that in just a month's time. So I'm really excited about that. You can go to our website to make a donation, and that would help us tremendously. We have founding sponsors. Those who are able to give $1,000 or more are listed on our website as a founding sponsor. But also, our memory boxes cost about $30 to make. So any donation, you can dedicate a memory box in the name of a loved one that you have lost. So if you've experienced miscarriage, or a friend of yours has, you can actually make a donation, and we will write that baby's name on the memory card inside the boxes. So when that goes forward to someone who's grieving, they're going to have that pay it forward mentality is that you were spoken to in your grief, and you were given comfort, and you're going to pass that forward on to someone else.
Beautiful. Once again, thank you so much for coming on today to tell us about this great ministry. The website is wecarryoustill.org. Such an important ministry, something that's definitely needed in the church, and so glad to hear that you've got this started, and about the great things yet to come, even with the book and retreats and everything else. Just fantastic to hear about. So again, thank you so much for coming on today to tell us all about it.
Thank you for allowing me to. This is just something that I am so passionate about. And like I said, as a church, we need to do better supporting families like mine. I think families with both living children and miscarriage in their fertility journey are more common than many people realize. And it's just so easy to assume that this topic isn't relevant to me because I haven't experienced miscarriage or I'm past my childbearing years. But this really is a universal issue. This is a calling from God, a corporal work of mercy. And it's time to honor our faith and honor the lives that God has created from the moment of conception until their natural death. And sometimes that's a short time, but it's still an impactful time, and it's a life that has been given to us from God to transform us and ultimately bring us into union with Him. And so I hope that I can be part of the church moving in that direction.
Absolutely. Once again, the website is wecarryoustill.org. Kuria Jocelyn Abyad, again, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for listening here on God With Us Live. Always a pleasure to bring ministries like this to your attention and give you something else to, again, be able to refer people to. Maybe you're a listener, maybe this is something you've experienced yourself within your own family, miscarriage, or those around you. And so it's a privilege, really, to be able to get the word out about a ministry like this and share it with others. And I hope you share it with those around you too. And if you're in a situation that you're able to support, We Carry You Still financially, and of course always with prayers, but financially is helpful too. I encourage you to make that gift, make that donation, and kind of pay it forward to help people who could benefit from a ministry like this. Once more, wecarryoustill.org. Thank you for listening today on God With Us Live, and we'll be back next week to share more wonderful things going on in our Eastern Catholic churches. God bless.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of God With Us Live. Make sure to tell a friend or two about us and subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to follow God With Us online on Facebook and Instagram for even more great content about the Eastern Catholic churches. And don't forget to check out all the other great Eastern Catholic podcasts at godwithusradio.org, where faith meets life. God With Us Live is a production of God With Us Radio, hosted, produced, and edited by Nick Modelski. Send us a message at info@godwithusradio.org.